Okay, great. So I'm Victoria Rosa Sturley. You'll know me from openandawesome.com. So I work with poly people and people in open relationships and help them navigate the pitfalls so that they can just have fun, love, connection and healthy relationships, which is what this is all about. And today we have Dawn Serra joining us. So super happy to have Dawn with us. She's a sex and relationship coach. She does a bunch of stuff and works with things around shame, around courage. She does sex education and works with couples, with individuals, and also you may have followed her podcast called Sex Gets Real, which is a lot of fun, so I really do recommend that you follow that. So hello Dawn.
Hi, thanks so much for having me. I'm excited to chat today.
Yay! Good. So before we start really throwing the questions at Dawn, I wanted to do a bit of housekeeping. So first of all, I know we've said this is about an hour long. We are aiming to keep it to like 45 minutes because I know that's easier for everyone. So I've got some questions already set up for Dawn. There were some people who sent them through, either through email or posted them in the Polyamory group on Facebook. So we'll be taking some of those, but we'll be more than happy to take your questions because this is meant to be a Q&A and I think we'll get a lot of value from your questions here on the day. So you can see that in the little panel, and it depends whether you're like seeing it on the web or where you've actually downloaded the app, or so I don't want to run you through the specifics of that, but you should have a place that says questions, and I can see lots of you have already started posting some questions, which is great. So I'm going to get to those comments in a little bit. I can see them coming in. So just post them at any time. We'll be looking at them, but Dawn and I are likely to just be focused on our conversation, so we'll just take them at the end, most likely, unless anything kind of really jumps out at us. But that's not the only way you can ask questions. You can also come on over voice. I know that not everyone is comfortable doing that, so there's absolutely no obligation to come on over voice. But if you do want to come on over voice, then when we get to the Q&A portion, if you could raise your hand, so you'll see that next to the orange or red arrow, you should have a little hand icon. So can you please press it now so that I know you know where it is and how that works? And we might also so I saw a couple there, yeah, thank you. Can I have some more just to make sure that you know where that is? That's great. Okay. Right. I can see there's a couple more people who maybe haven't found it yet. So it should be right about the top of your screen, and you should have a microphone which should be grayed out right now. Okay. Well, I'm just going to lower those hands. And also, if you want to come on over voice and you can't manage to use that, then just type it in the questions and we'll give way to you. So there's two ways you can work your audio in the system. So one of them is, through the computer, which a lot of you are probably doing, or through your tablet or phone app, so Wi-Fi, or through the phone. If you're on the phone, once we tell you to go live, you'll need to punch in a code. So just make sure you do that, and if not, we'll put you in the queue, so we can get around to doing that quite quickly. All right. Yes, and I was saying that you're welcome to tweet away as we're doing this interview. You can, I am Victoria Rosa OA on Twitter. And Dawn, do you want to post your handle as well?
Yeah, it's I don't think I can post for everybody. It says organizers only, but my Twitter handle is Dawn_Serra, which is Serra, and I just actually tweeted with the hashtag, which is OpenAwesome. So if you just look under that hashtag, then you will find me.
Aha, so I'm just posting that again, and OpenAwesome is the hashtag. So feel free to do that, and that also lets us know, after we can get to other questions and other comments, so that'd be awesome. Okay. So I can see a comment there. She asked all the questions when you two were out for a drink. Yes, I see that. Yeah, and some highs, so thanks. Great. Good. So let's just get started. So as I was saying, Dawn does a lot of amazing work, a lot of it to do with sexuality, and she's also part of the open and poly community. So I think she's a great person to take our questions, because one of my starting points with this was we tend to talk about the relationship component a lot and go into it in a lot of level of detail, and sometimes we don't talk about the sex so much, maybe because we want to be recognized for the relationship aspect, which is, we're kind of like relationship geeks, don't we tend to be, but actually sex is why a lot of us get into this, and of course we really care about sex. So I thought I would get Dawn on that angle. So, good. So the first question I had, Dawn, is that a lot of us go into poly or open relationships because we want to have sexual variety, but I see that sometimes, and there was an article on doing the rounds on social media just this week, about like, oh, I'm kind of like getting bored and our libido is going down, so I think we need to like bring other people in. And then there's these other schools that kind of go, well, that's a recipe for like distancing yourself. You should start new relationships when you're in a good space with your partner. So I was wondering what your take on that is, and whether that means that we don't have to work on the sexual variety with our first partner, or...
Yeah, that's a really good question. So when people talk about you shouldn't open your relationship up when you're in distress, that to me is really when you have a situation where you're not openly talking, you are struggling to get needs met in a way that is supportive of each other, and it's kind of one of those like last ditch efforts. It's things are falling apart and we don't know how to make it better. Some people go and have a baby, and some people decide like, okay, let's bring somebody else into the bedroom, and that can be catastrophic for people who aren't good communicators. So if you're in a relationship where communication just really isn't something that happens easily, and then you open your relationship, that's when you're setting yourself up for disaster. But if you are in a relationship where the communication is great, you're really open with each other, you know how to navigate problems, you've been through issues and worked through them, and maybe the sex just has gotten a little bit stale and you want to do something exciting, then I think in that case, opening up your relationship, and whether that's a poly situation or a swinging situation or whatever it is, can actually be a really fun thing to do. But it comes from a place of health, and you just kind of want to change the sexual element, but you need to be able to communicate through challenges and through jealousy and through issues. So I kind of see those two things as, is your relationship generally pretty healthy and your communication is strong and you're just kind of looking for ways to, inject a little fun or something new, or a new challenge into your relationship, then opening it up can be a really great thing. It's just, you have to make sure that that communication base is there and that you're fundamentally pretty strong. Now, you can make your sex life really exciting without opening it up or without adding a new person. So that's a lot of the work that I do, actually. But it always comes back to, are we good at communicating? Can we talk openly about sex? When one of us has really challenging feelings, are we able to openly work through that without it causing a lot of issues? And if you can do that, then I think you're at a great jumping off point for, having threesomes or going to clubs and seeing what happens and all that kind of stuff, because being able to work through it together is going to really be the key.
Mm-hmm. So it's more about, doing it together and having great communication, etc. So, yeah. So you don't need extra people, but extra people can be very fun.
Exactly. Yeah. If that's something that both of you really want and you want to try it out, or you've done it before, I actually have some friends who have an amazing marriage, and they've been married. They're a lesbian couple, and I think they've been married now like 11 years, and they've opened and closed their relationship probably 4 times at this point. And each time they open it, they learn something new. And then if they reach a point where they feel like it's compromising their marriage, then they close it down and kind of reevaluate and work through it. But they're really amazing communicators. And so they're able to kind of grow each time. Each time they do it, it gets a little bit easier. They are a lot more successful. They learn, okay, we're not so good at this, so let's try something different. So you have options, and, it doesn't have to be like once it's open, it's always open, or, I'm never opening it. You can just say, I'm not opening it now, and kind of work through things, because we all change and we all evolve. So allowing that growth and that flexibility is also really healthy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I really like that, how, because it's true that a lot of people tend to think like once it's open, then it's open forever, and, it's kind of like a one-way street. And, I had some friends who I think, they did excellently well, because when they got pregnant, they just said, okay, our focus needs to be on the baby. We know that NRE kind of like gets the better of us. So, it's like baby comes first. So we're going to close the relationship for the first year of the baby's life. And, that worked really well for them. So. Yeah.
And you actually said something really interesting when we were talking earlier this week that I loved, and I think it's something that a lot of people overlook, which is, throughout the course of your life, you may be really poly for 10 years, and then something happens, or you meet someone, or just you personally go through a change, and you go into a place where you're feeling really monogamous, and then you might be in that for a while, and then you might meet somebody, and you want to, kind of open it up a little bit, but not go full poly. And so allowing yourself that flexibility to be on a journey where it's not like, you're kind of on this point A, point B, and now you can't go back to point A. It's a lot more fluid than that. And I think a lot of people think, okay, well, once we become swingers, there's no going back. Or once we say we're poly, then we're poly forever. And, just allowing yourselves to be human and to try things and to change and evolve. And that, to me, is what makes a really healthy relationship, whether you're monogamous or open or poly or whatever it is. Allowing yourselves the growth is where you really end up building super strong relationships.
Mm-hmm. I would agree with that. Yeah. And, just taking other people into account that you're saying, because I think that's one of the pet peeves in the poly community, is just remember that the rest of the people you're involved with are humans as well, who have feelings.
Yeah. Who have feelings, exactly, and needs. And and I mean, when it comes to sex too, that's true. So, your needs sexually constantly change throughout your life. And the needs that you have in your 20s are very different than the needs that you're going to have in your 40s and then into your 60s. And, I love Joan Price. She's one of my favorite sex educators, and she specializes in sex in your 50s, 60s, 70s, and beyond. And she is a fantastic resource if people don't know her. But she actually talks about some of the best sex of your life happens in your 60s and your 70s. And your body has changed, but there are a lot of other things that are really fantastic that are going on at that time. So I think just remembering, beyond relationships, when it just comes to sex, your needs sexually are going to change as your body changes, as you have new experiences or experience traumas or have kids or whatever it is. So allowing yourselves to be flexible when it comes to sex is so important. And a lot of people think, okay, well, the sex is working right now, so it's going to work that way forever. And then when one of you starts to change, it can feel really difficult for your partner of, well, this used to work all the time, why isn't it working anymore? So that's a lot of, what I work through also as a sex coach, is helping people to kind of navigate that. But you're so right. I mean, remembering that whether you have one partner or 2 partners or 6 partners, everybody not only has emotional needs, but they have sexual needs. So being able to kind of navigate that balance is really important.
Mm-hmm. And I really wanted to ask you about like sex and NRE, because we kind of like tend to take them separately, but you know, like based on my experience and what I see in people, it can just be like some people get super NRE after just like one good really sex session.
Yeah.
And you know, some people it takes 6 months, but it kind of feels like the sex hormones are kind of at work there.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I mean, how do you see that working, especially I guess like for the people who maybe don't want to go like super deep with anyone that they're meeting?
Yeah. I mean, I think, so the thing with NRE is that so many of us know is it makes you...
Sorry, Dawn, I just realized that we didn't explain what NRE is.
Oh, okay.
Should we start with that?
So new relationship energy, that is those super in love feelings that you get when you meet somebody and just like everything feels amazing and you're so head over heels and they can do no wrong, and it happens to everybody. It's not just a poly thing, but you know, it's that moment when you're like, oh my god, I can't get enough of this person, and you think about them all the time and you become a little bit obsessive and you're texting constantly and you just want to spend every minute with them. That's new relationship energy, and it's actually a physical change that's happening in your brain. And it's just like being high, basically. They've done scientific studies that show NRE triggers the same areas of your brain as cocaine, and which is fascinating. But NRE is also something that tends to fade with time. And most people experience NRE for about 6 months, but some people are able to sustain that a lot longer if they, know what it is and are really conscious about it. But, if you're in a place where you're going to be opening your relationship up or you want to explore poly, then knowing NRE is really important, because that's when people do things that can be really damaging, or when you can neglect people, and because you're so just like obsessed with this one person and you can't get enough of them, and it's almost like the rest of the world falls away. So if you've got other relationships, that can become really challenging for people, and that's where jealousy can come up and feeling neglected and all that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. So, of course, do you want to add anything about NRE, Victoria?
No, I think that, you've done a great job. I just, have to, like, warn people. It sounds, like, really scary, because this is, like, the main thing that, is in our, like, collective unconscious that, we hear this all the time, like, if your partner sleeps with someone else, they're going to leave you, and this is kind of what gets triggered when we're hearing about all of this. So it doesn't have to be like that.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. And just kind of knowing, one, that if your partner gets into a place where they have NRE with somebody else, or you are out, on a date with somebody and you start feeling NRE, knowing how you behave when you're in love and knowing that could happen, and then kind of being able to talk about it ahead of time with your partner or partners is so important. So that you can have a game plan and you can kind of plan for that, madness, if you will. But, with NRE and sex, I mean, one of the things that you experience when you're in that just like everything is amazing place when it comes to sex is they can do no wrong. And everything they do turns you on. And every single touch is like electric. And it's just this, really amazing, fantastic feeling, but at the same time, it's going to fade. And what kind of sex life are you left with when the NRE fades? A lot of times people in NRE, especially if they're new to it, do a lot of things that are out of character for themselves. So they might say yes to experiences that they don't really truly like if they weren't kind of under this veil of, oh my gosh, you're amazing. So when the NRE fades, are you still going to be willing to do those same things in order to, keep your partner happy? Or, those are just kind of some of the things that you need to think about. And then also with NRE, because you just want to be around that person all the time, it can mean that you are forgetting to spend time with your other partner or partners. And that can be really threatening and really challenging for everybody. Mm-hmm. But yeah, NRE sex is intense.
Yeah. So what would you say, like, for the people who, because not everyone in the audience is wanting to do poly, or they may be wanting to do poly, but they have reached polysaturation, which is another term you may not have heard about. So that means when you have all the partners that you want. You want no more.
Yep.
So, you may still want to have sex with people without like getting hit head over heels with NRE.
Mm-hmm.
So how can you do that?
Yeah. So one of the most, almost every single client that I have is in a place where they're struggling, where sex has become kind of boring, or they're in a bit of a rut, or their libidos are kind of suffering. And so that can happen whether you have one partner or you have many partners, because once NRE kind of fades, then you're in real life again. And you start seeing, flaws, and things start kind of coming out that kind of irritate you a little bit. Or, that thing that you kind of just put up with in NRE now really actually bothers you. So one, being able to talk about all of those things and just being really self-aware. That's true of any kind of relationship, whether it's monogamy or, non-monogamy or polyamory, whatever it is. The more self-aware you are and the more you're able to articulate your needs and understand your body, the more successful you're going to be in relationships and the healthier that you're going to be. Because then you can actually communicate needs and wants and ask for them and negotiate for them and those kinds of things. So when you get to a place where life just starts getting in the way, maybe your NRE is faded or you're still in NRE, but you just are super busy, I'm a huge fan of scheduling. So scheduling dates, scheduling sex. And I get pushback sometimes from people who think that scheduling sex is like the least romantic thing that you can possibly do, because our cultural stories are sex is supposed to be magically spontaneous and you should just like see each other and want to have sex all the time. And, like many cultural myths, that's just not the case, especially with our lives and how crazy they are. So scheduling sex, but the key to doing that well is building anticipation leading up to whatever that date is. So whether it's date night or sex night or whatever, okay, Friday night at 9, I've got this date. So you can spend all day Friday flirting with each other or sending pictures or building that anticipation so that when you are together, you are ready to go and you've kind of been like priming the pumps a little bit. And that's really the secret to maximizing the time that you do spend together and making sure that it happens. A lot of times other things just start kind of coming up and sex gets pushed down. So regardless of what kind of relationship that you're in, we all know that, doing the groceries and getting together with friends and taking care of the kids and working overtime and all those kinds of things, sex and taking care of ourselves gets pushed way down on the list. So if you actually put it in the calendar and you schedule it, then you can get playful with it, and you can make it really, really fun. But make sure you're scheduling that so that everybody knows, okay, I'm getting quality time and here's when it's going to happen, and you can kind of plan for it. So I think that's a huge, huge important key.
Yeah, I've always found that scheduling date nights, especially date nights when you're going to know that you're going to have sex or likely to have sex, it's just like, ooh, I'm going to have sex on Friday. Woo-hoo-hoo.
Exactly.
You can just like go the whole week going like, Friday.
Yes,
is the night.
yes, that's exactly it. It's kind of like you have this dirty little secret and you can play with it and you can wear your sexy undies or, dress up a little bit extra that day or whatever it is, but it gives you something to look forward to. And it also gives you an opportunity to make each other feel special. So it's not like you put it on the calendar and then you forget about it until your little buzzer goes off that, oh yeah, I've got a date night in 30 minutes. It's, building the anticipation that day before and throughout that day, leading up to it, so that both of you just feel really special and wanted and desired, and that helps whether you're monogamous or non-monogamous. Having that desire and that attention is what helps with making sure everybody's needs are getting met, and then you don't have to worry about things like, cheating and infidelity as much, because those are kind of the triggers for cheating and infidelity a lot, is feeling unappreciated. So that's a good start.
Yeah, and I wanted to ask you about cheating, actually, because I just see, it's kind of been coming up. There was that amazing talk by Esther Perel on TED.
Yeah.
That kind of like sparked things off, and then, one of the main things like you hear from new poly people especially is just like, oh, that's great because it makes cheating impossible. But yeah, kind of what's your take on that? I mean, how does it happen?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. So I hear that a lot from poly people. It's that, well, if you're poly, then there's no cheating. And it's this assumption that like poly is the cure to infidelity, and it's really not. And I think that that's a really dangerous idea to have. And there's actually a couple of different schools of thought that I really like. So Esther Perel in her TED Talk talked about how infidelity is a whole different issue from monogamy or non-monogamy. I agree with that. And then Charlie Glickman, who, if folks don't know about him, should check him out. He's amazing. He has a website called Make Sex Easy, or you can do, I think, charlieglickman.com. But he talks about how infidelity is a violation of the rules. So you can be in a non-monogamous or a polyamorous relationship, and let's say the rules are you can see other people and sleep with other people as long as we talk about it first. That's what makes your partner feel really supported and like their needs are getting met. Well, if you start dating somebody without talking to your partner first, and there's that element of either secrecy or just really not upholding what the rules are, that's an act of infidelity. So part of what I see coming up with poly is everybody thinks that people who are in the poly community are just automatically like super ethical, super self-aware, and I think everybody strives to do that, but with more and more people becoming interested in non-monogamy and polyamory and kind of wanting to try things, there's a lot of us in the community who still haven't done a lot of the work of being strong communicators, of knowing what our triggers are, of being able to ask for what we want. And so then if we get into relationships where now we're feeling kind of unsure of ourselves, we're feeling unappreciated, maybe we don't know how to ask for what we want, then it becomes a lot easier for a violation of those rules to occur. And, a lot of times infidelity doesn't come from a place of wanting to hurt somebody else or a lack of love. As Sarah Pearl actually talks about, a lot of times infidelity and cheating is a turning away of the self. So there's something about yourself that you're really unhappy with or you're ashamed of. And so you're trying to kind of run from that side of yourself by getting your needs met in ways that could probably really hurt people. And that's going to be true of whether you're monogamous, you're polyamorous, whatever it is. If there's something about yourself that you're ashamed of or you're running from, then you're more likely to make decisions that can hurt people. So I don't think that polyamory cures infidelity. I think it can help for a lot of people, especially if the reason you're cheating is out of boredom, but you can feel unappreciated and unheard in multiple relationships the same way that you can in a single relationship. And so there's still that opportunity for infidelity to happen, which is why it's so important for us, in any kind of relationship, to practice our communication skills and to do things that make us uncomfortable until we get better at them, and being able to ask for getting our needs met and having healthy boundaries and all that kind of stuff. That's what's really going to help create resiliency around, cheating and infidelity is, having rules that you feel really comfortable with and that your partner feels comfortable with, and also having the skills to renegotiate those boundaries and those rules so that as you change, the rules and the boundaries can change with you. So then you're always being honest and ethical and feeling supported.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I would agree with that. So you can essentially still continue to grow and pursue things that make you feel happy and joyful within the relationship instead of having to kind of go behind and pretend that's not happening. I think that's a huge red flag. So I do see people even just lying about what they're doing with their friends on their friends' night out. So, if they have to lie about that, never mind about new people.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. I was in a poly situation where I was a third. So there was a married couple, they had a secondary, and then I was a third to the guy. And he was not being really honest with some of the other people that were in the series of relationships that he was having. And even though he had all of these people who were interested in him and interested in having sex with him and had these relationships, the lack of honesty, really ended up causing a lot of hurt. And so that's possible in any kind of relationship structure. If you, struggle with being really open about your feelings and your needs, then, stuff like that can happen, and that's a shame. But again, I don't think polyamory is the cure. It's being really self-aware and knowing how to say difficult things and ask for scary things and all that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and kind of push back when you know, your partner might want to like shame you for feeling something, or just kind of make some part of you or what you're expressing not be okay, because I also see that happen quite a lot. And you know, I actually got a question sent a bit further, you know, a bit ahead of today, that was, you know, kind of in the area of what do you do when you know, when your partners have different needs. And this woman has actually had 2 partners, and she said, I have a very high sex drive and I want to have sex at least once a day, and my partners can't meet my needs. And you know, she was saying, like, sometimes I get a bit shamed around it. What can I do, you know?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of things going on, I think, for that particular person that's asking the questions. So first, your partners are not allowed to shame you, no matter what it is. So whether it's you like watching porn, or you like having sex a lot, or you like having kinky sex, or whatever it is, you know, if someone starts shaming you for what you need, then that needs to be a situation where you actually say, I'm feeling shamed by the words that you're saying right now. And so I would really love it if we could kind of talk about this in a different way, because this is important to me and I don't want to feel shame inside of our relationship. So let's talk about how you can be supportive, or we can have a better conversation around this, but those words don't feel good. So, you know, it's perfectly okay to just say, that really doesn't feel good when you say those words, and here's why. And it's not an attack, and it's not you getting defensive. It's you just being very open and honest about your feelings and your needs, and then asking for something different. So if you're in a situation where somebody's shaming you for something, then that needs to be kind of the first step in the conversation. The other thing, when it comes to having a high sex drive, you know, all of us have different types of sex drives. So some of us have none at all, and maybe we're, you know, identify as asexual. Some of us have really, really high sex drives where we really either need or like enjoy sex all the time. And then others of us kind of swing back and forth on this scale, you know, depending on where we are in our lives, what kind of NRE we have. You'll notice when you're in NRE, your sex drive is very high. So if you don't normally have a really high sex drive and then suddenly you're horny all the time, it's probably because you're in NRE. But I think one of the myths that we have in our society is that when you have sexual needs, the only way to get them met is by having intercourse with another person. And that's actually one of the things that I work around a lot, is that you can get your sexual needs met in lots of different ways, and you're responsible for saying what your needs are and then meeting those needs. And you can't always rely on your partner to always just be ready to go when you are. So even if you two just kind of have medium sex drives, and one of you just really, really wants to have sex, if the other one doesn't want to have sex, then you need to respect the fact that they don't, and then you have to find a way to meet your needs. So one of the things that I would just offer to this person is, you know, if you've got 2 partners and they aren't meeting your sexual needs, then get really creative around other ways where you can feel like you're getting those needs met and you're getting that release. So whether that's masturbating more, or getting some new toys, or you know, watching videos, or talking about getting another partner that just fulfills some of your sex needs, whatever it is, you know, exploring alternatives to just having traditional sex. One of the things that Charlie Glickman was talking about is sometimes it's nice, like if you've got a partner who just really isn't in the mood for sex, but you want them to be there because you like the closeness, ask your partner if they'll lay with you and hold you, or lay next to you and just kind of touch you while you take care of yourself, while you masturbate, or while you two mutually masturbate, whatever it is. But get really creative. You know, it doesn't have to just be the 2 of you having intercourse. It might just be that that person's close to you and holding you while you make yourself come, or while you masturbate, or whatever it is. So, you know, there's the shame issue. Deal with that and cut it off right away. Don't let that continue. And then get creative around how can you get those yummy feelings and have those releases that you really need, you know, while still respecting the fact that your partners can tell you no, and go from there.
No, I really like that idea, and I've seen it happen, you know, where it's just like one person's masturbating and the other person's just like being a nice partner and cuddling or doing whatever. And the important thing is that you know, that person can like hold the space, because a lot of people feel a lot of shame around masturbation. So
Yes.
it's quite important to just, stay present and not judge, etc.
Exactly. Yeah, and asking for that. I mean, you can say to somebody, this might make you a little bit uncomfortable, but I would really love it if you would just hold me while I did this thing. And it would make me feel really supported if you just showed up, even if you're not really sure what to do. It's okay to acknowledge the awkward. It's okay to acknowledge, like, this is something I've never asked for before, and you might not know what you think about it, but let's give it a try. So I like treating everything when it comes to sex as an experiment, which means there's no right or wrong. It's all just information. So this is an opportunity to gather more information and to make a new ask and to try a new test and see what happens. So just adopting that mindset can also help shift a lot of shame and awkwardness, because it's not about getting it right or wrong. It's not about being good or bad. It's about, we're doing an experiment, and it's just data. So the data might lead us one direction, it might lead us in another, but data isn't bad. It's just information. So taking that mindset can help a lot too if you're feeling kind of funny about stuff.
Great. I love that. Good. So we've got questions from the audience. So, and it is, time for everyone to get their questions. Some of you got them in early, which is great. If you haven't, just please type them into questions, or alternatively, you can raise your hand. So that's like clicking on the raised hand icon, and I'll open the microphone for you, and you can ask on the line. You don't have to give any information that could identify you at all. And, your name isn't going to show up in the recording either. Okay? So cool. Question number 1 is, one of my former metamors, so that is my partner's partner, kept invading my scheduled time. Trying to discuss this fact blew up. How do you navigate this?
So it sounds like this individual's partner didn't like hearing that their other partner was invading on this space. Is that right?
Was it your partner, or was it your partner's partner that didn't like to hear about that? Or did they both not like to hear about that?
I'll just answer the question kind of in a really general way around tough conversations. So when you have time scheduled, that time is sacred. And you deserve that time, and you need that time. So if something comes up every once in a while, that's just life. But if something happens consistently where you feel like, okay, I'm really not getting the time that I need, it's, this person's constantly showing up late, or this person's constantly coming in when we're supposed to have the house to ourselves, then, having that conversation is going to have to happen. And sometimes when we have tough conversations, we have to have it more than once, because it's difficult for people to hear information sometimes. So sometimes it has to be 1 or 2 conversations, but also starting the conversation in a way that allows room for everybody to have their experiences is so important. And a lot of times the way we start tough conversations is, this person's always invading my time, and I don't appreciate it. And that's very confrontational. So no matter what you're talking about, the person that's receiving that information is automatically going to start shutting down. Now, I'm not saying that's what you did, but that's very common. I have a habit of doing that kind of stuff too, because we're just so worked up, and you just want to get the information out, and you're uncomfortable, and you're angry, and all that kind of stuff. So there's a technique, actually, that Reid Mihalko talks about, which is, you tell somebody you want to talk to them, you tell them what you're afraid is going to happen, you tell them what you want to happen, and then you tell them the thing. So it's kind of like, hey, I want to have a conversation with you about some boundaries that I'm struggling with, and I'm afraid that if I tell you this thing, you're going to get really angry and you're not going to hear me. And I would love for you to actually hear me so that we can talk about how to move past this and fix it. And here's the thing, so-and-so seems to be making a habit of invading on my time, and I just really need that time to be honored. So what can we do to ensure everybody feels supported and I get the time that I deserve? And then kind of go from there. So using a very non-confrontational, open model that allows for discussion versus blaming, that works for pretty much any kind of tough conversation that you need to have. That is, no matter who you're talking to. But you do deserve that time. And I think sometimes, too, when we're in NRE, we don't want to hear anything bad about somebody else, or, our partner that we're in NRE with, they can do no wrong. So that's also a really challenging time to have conversations about people. So if this person was in NRE, with the other individual, and they were just kind of in that rose-colored glasses stage. That's just kind of comes with the territory. It can be really hard to have conversations about partners and other people when all of those feelings are so heightened. So just going in, being aware of that and being really gentle around it can also really help. And yes, that's you kind of having to do some pre-work around it, but if you do that, then you're setting yourself up for more success when it comes to actually being heard. So I hope that helps a little bit.
Yeah, and I would add, also, if it would be useful, think about like taking some data, rather than just being like, always, this keeps happening. Yes. It was like last Thursday, I don't know, you showed up half an hour late, or, you were on the phone to this person for half an hour at this time. Was it really half an hour? Yes, it was half an hour. They phoned you at this time, blah, blah, blah. And, then it happened again 3 dates earlier and 5 dates earlier. So, because otherwise, we tend to not be very objective.
Exactly. Yeah, I love that. Like having concrete examples, and then making sure that when you have that conversation, you're just addressing one issue. Because sometimes we have a tendency when we're frustrated or angry to try and address multiple issues at the same time. So coming in and having your data and making sure that, you haven't waited too long, that it's awkward, but that you have enough that you can actually say, on this date, this is what happened. On this date, this is what happens. And avoiding, like you said, words like always, never, those are just trigger words for people. So completely avoid those when you're having conversations, because it's not always and it's not never. It's on these specific instances, which is more often than I would like. And then go from there.
Yeah. Yeah. And I would add, sometimes people do blow up, because we all get angry. So, it's a thing of like, what happens when somebody blows up? Is that like going way over your boundaries? I mean, like for me, I don't take insults, and there's only a certain amount of screaming I can take. People scream at me 3 times, that's the end of the relationship. Sometimes it doesn't need to get to 3 times, but other people think like screaming once a day is perfectly normal. So, just be aware of your boundaries, and that can be a bit tougher to negotiate, I guess, with your metamor, with your partner. But you can still negotiate it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Good. So I can't see more questions coming in, so we'll just take some that came in via email before. So let me just... go through. Okay. So this is kind of a bit similar, but different. So this man said that his wife died recently, and he has found that his sexual needs aren't being met, and sex is more important than finding love for him right now. He does want love, but he wants sex more, and he did have a very healthy sex life with his wife. But now, just quick sex won't impress him. It won't really like meet his needs. So he's saying, how can I get my sexual needs met when I can't get close to anyone?
Yeah, I think that's a really challenging situation. So first of all, I'm really sorry to hear about your wife. And going through grief of any kind is this challenging journey where you never quite know when you're going to have good days and when you're going to have bad days and when you're going to be ready. So just allowing yourself that process is really important. And I think the fact that I have sexual needs, I'm not ready to be close to somebody, but I also just don't kind of want like fly-by-night, one-night stands. That's really good information to have about what your needs are. And there are tons of people out there, especially if you're using online dating, who I think would be really open to having ongoing sexual relationship that, isn't more than that. As long as you're really upfront about here's what I'm looking for, then you're likely to find people who are willing to give that to you. So if what you want is to have, a sexual partner or two that you see on a consistent basis, but you're not ready to really develop kind of the emotional closeness or, kind of the more traditional relationship, then just being really open about that up front, I think you'd be surprised at how many people are down with that. people who are either non-monogamous or polyamorous and would just love to have some more sex without having to necessarily add more dates to their super busy schedule. I can see people being interested in that. And then also just being aware that for all of our good intentions, sometimes when you start, spending time with somebody, you start developing attachments. So making sure that you're just being very clear as you go along. If at any point things get too challenging, letting that person know, like, I'm starting to feel like this is getting a lot more close or a lot more intimate than I feel ready for. So I need a little bit of space, or can we dial things back? And as long as you're being really open and honest about what your needs are, I think you're going to find people who are willing to help you out with those things. So that doesn't seem like a really unreasonable request to me. It's not something that's like really super off the wall or difficult to find, especially with online dating opportunities where you can just kind of be really open about your situation and what you're looking for. I think you'll find people.
Yeah, and I think, lots of guys say it's really difficult to find that kind of connection because, there's all these guys on the internet looking for sex. But, you've been, like, honest enough to just post this. And, so I think if you're ready to be vulnerable like this, people will see you as a person and see that you're actually coming to them as a person rather than somebody, like, trying to, like, take advantage of them, which... yeah, and just keep that open. I think another thing that I see people struggling with around grief is, if I have a lover who's just for sex, I can't, like, keep crying on their shoulder. But you would be surprised, there's lots of people who can and are willing to like be there for you, even if you're having a sexual connection in a bit the same way as you do with friends, They're not necessarily just going to run away. And I know that, having sex can be a very emotional experience as well. So, if tears come up, then, cry by all means. And I think most people out there are able to take that. So.
Yeah, I actually had a lover about a year and a half ago where he was kind of in a similar situation where he had a very ill wife. And he just needed his sexual needs met. She was really ill and not able to meet those needs. But he also just had a lot kind of on his plate. And so even though our agreement was just sex, this is never going to be more, it's not going to be a relationship, we would spend a lot of time between, moments of having sex or after having sex where he would just talk to me and tell me about all the stuff that he was struggling with. And he would ask about me. So it was a two-way street. But we were able to really just kind of unwind a lot of the stuff that he had to keep in because he couldn't share it with other people. I was that for him. And then he also was there for me and, offered me advice on some stuff I was struggling with. And we had amazing sex and it lasted about 4 months. And then that was the end of it. So I think, part of the reason why I got into that relationship with him was because he was really open and vulnerable about what he was looking for and where he was when we first started talking. And I was attracted to that. So I'm much more attracted to that than somebody who's just like, hey, meet up with me tonight and I don't want to ever talk to you again. And some people are super into that, which is awesome, but that just wasn't where I was or what I was looking for. I was looking more for just that vulnerability. And even though it wasn't going to be more, it was what I wanted. So I think you can definitely find that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you can have like really deep, meaningful conversations with people and have sex with them without them needing to like become your life partner or anything along those lines, not even, fall in love with them. It can just like stay at that level and be wonderful for what it is.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Right, so we are at 50 minutes. We've gone over. So I would love to just keep going, and I have like a ton of questions. So but I think we better just cut it off so everyone can go and enjoy their evening or their morning still if they're in the like
where in the world you are.
Yeah, depending on where you are. Yeah, and just to remind you, we're not disappearing, we're still here, and you can tweet to us, so you have our handles in the chat. So do you want to repeat that again for the people watching the recording, Dawn?
Yep, so I'm on Twitter. It's Dawn_Serra, and Sarah is Serra. So I'll be looking for you. Feel free to either tweet at me or use our hashtag OpenAwesome, and I'll keep an eye on that over the next couple of hours and through tomorrow morning. So if you have any questions, feel free to do that, or you can come to my website. I have a contact form, and you can actually submit anonymous questions. And then I address those like in my blog and those kinds of things. So, lots of ways to reach me. I'm happy to answer more questions if they come up.
That's great. That's great. And Dawn, I know you also had something to offer for the people who were here.
Yeah, so for the people who registered, I actually have this online workbook that's all around understanding your needs, your desires, your wants, and kind of what your fears and triggers are. And then at the very end of the workbook, it helps you kind of pull together some action plans for, what are the 3, most urgent needs that I have, and how can I ask for them, and where am I feeling kind of stuck, and I want to focus on that. So Victoria is going to send that out to everybody. It's an online workbook, so you just kind of fill out this questionnaire, and then once you submit it, it emails you all the answers so that you can just kind of work with that. And it just helps to give kind of some clarity to all the stuff that's in your head that you probably don't take the time to write down. I find that's a really, really powerful tool, and just helping to shed light on stuff that you kind of like are feeling stuck around something, and now that it's on paper, you actually can say, oh, okay, that's what I need to work on. So that's for everybody who signed up, and I hope you enjoy it.
Okay, great. So thanks so much for joining us, and we'll see you in other webinars. You know where to find us. Okay. So,
bye.
Thank you. Bye.